Welcome back. I am the loud little ducky. We are getting through these defense witnesses, and hopefully we will have a verdict soon in this case, and it will have a resolution. This video, we are going to talk about Brian Lucky Loughran. We're going to call him Lucky because there are too many Brians in this case, and he is Lucky. He is the snowplow driver. He testified on day 27 of the trial. David Yannetti is the one who did his direct. He gets up there and talks about how he has lived in Canton since about 1990. His brother, Michael, was on the Canton Select Board with Chris Albert. He knows the Alberts. They went to school together. He actually used to work at D&E Pizza, which Chris Albert owns, back in the day. He, on the night of January night, or actually early morning hours of January 29th, 2022, he came in to do his shift. And so he came in, he drove Frankentruck, and he was in charge of plowing Fairview and around that area. Let's see here. I think his call time was about 2:15 or 2:30 was his call time. I believe that's what he said. But he ends up driving around Fairview around 2:40 to 2:45 around on January 29th, 2022. And so basically, whether it was 2:30, 2:40, 2:45, he is the one who drove down 34 Fairview that morning. Now, let's show you what Frankentruck looks like. Where did you go? There we go. All right. Let's share Frankentruck because we wanted to see Frankentruck last year and we didn't get to. So we're going to share screen and show Frankentruck because, of course, here is Frankentruck. It's green. You can see it's got big headlights. It's got these top lights here that go out, can really light up a street. He's got his lights up here as well. And then he's got the plow that's attached down there. This would be his view looking out to the left, or basically the driver's side. This is kind of looking out that front and what the inside of it looks like. This would be looking to the right of him. And he's up high. So he can see. He should be able to see. He talks about going down Cedar Crest and then turning on to 34 Fairview. Let's see. Do they bring up any other images during his direct? No. All right. So that is Frankentruck. Big old green snowplow truck. And so he does a pass down 34 Fairview. And he says that he never saw a body on the lawn. And so goes down there, takes him about that was the first pass, and then he 5 or 10 minutes, and then he kinda turns around and then goes down the other side and does a second pass, still never seeing the body. Comes back around about 45 minutes, later, so about 3:30ish, um, he tries to go down 34 Fairview. He now sees a Ford Edge in front of 34 Fairview, which was not there when he just went down it 45 minutes prior. So at around 2:40, 2:45, he did not see this Ford Edge. He was able to just go down the road and nothing was blocking the road. Comes back right around 3:30, and when he goes to do his second sweep of this road, a Ford Edge is now there in the road, which was weird because, 1, it wasn't there before, but, um, also, usually there's not, um usually the Alberts don't park their cars in the road. He knew that the Alberts owned, um, a Ford Edge, and he did not call it in. He he knows the Alberts and, he just didn't call it in. So he went around the Ford Edge. Um, he should have called it in because they would have either had somebody call the residents and tell them to move that vehicle, or they would have had, and if they didn't answer or they didn't move it, then somebody would come have it towed so that it could be plowed because you're not supposed to park in the streets, especially when snow plows are going to be coming and plowing the roads. You need to park them in your driveway. Um, that is what I hear they're supposed to do. I don't live in an area where it snows and we have snow plows, so that's not something I've ever had to worry about. Um, and so then he goes around for about a third time, about 3 hours later, which puts him around 6:15ish. Um, and he had turned down 34 Fairview, but he couldn't go all the way down 34 Fairview, because the or he may not have even turned on 34 Fairview, but he either turned a little bit on it and then had to go off onto a different road, or he couldn't turn on 34 Fairview and had to just continue going straight because the road was blocked off by 6:15 with police cruisers, and the police were blocking 34 Fairview and you couldn't go down it. Um, so then 2 weeks after the incident, someone from the defense contacted him. There was Karen Reed had a private investigator, I believe his name was Paul, contacted Lucky, and talked to him. I think they came and found him where he was driving the Zamboni. So he's not only a snowplow driver, he is a Zamboni driver as well at, like, the little hockey rinks or ice skating rink thing that goes and smooths out the ice and everything. The Zamboni guy, how cool is that? And then so he talks to them. He tells them, he never saw a body, and everything that happened that night. He saw the Ford Edge, all that. Never talked to the police, um, until 2023. At least a year, I think it was over a year, until somebody from Massachusetts State Police decided to talk to the snowplow driver who would have seen a body or wouldn't have seen a body. But Proctor decided not to talk to this guy. And Proctor says in the last trial that he tried to contact somebody about finding out if somebody plowed the streets or plowed 34 Fairview, and somebody told him that nobody plowed 34 Fairview, so he didn't know there was a snowplow driver, which is BS. And I don't know who would have told him that. I think he's just making something up because they clearly would have said, "Yeah, we had plows all over the place." Um, and so then after that, he spoke with someone from that other law enforcement agency, not Canton or MSP, but we know the feds, the FBI. And he also spoke to the defense. He did testify last year in the trial, and he testified on behalf of the defense last year as well. He he comes off as just a normal guy who has lived in Canton for most of his life. He grew up in Canton. He lives here now, and he's just a hardworking man who just leads a normal life. He doesn't think he's anybody special. So that was Yannetti on direct. Then Hank Brennan gets up on cross and says, "Have you ever been threatened or intimidated?" And Lucky says, "No." Then he asks him about a blogger, doesn't mention, I don't think he mentioned Turtle Boy by name. And Turtle Boy, Carney, was sitting in court this day when Lucky was testifying. But Hank was trying to be like, "Oh, this blogger, didn't he threaten you? And haven't you been told to do the right thing?" And he was I don't, nobody threatened me, nobody intimidated me. Um, you know, they didn't he tell you to come in here and say this and all this? And Lucky was like, "No." And it's interesting that he's like, "Oh, so if Turtle Boy says do the right thing, it's intimidation. But when Kelly Devers, Boston police commissioner person, tells her to do the right thing, that's not them intimidating her into saying something they want. That's just them telling her to tell the truth." But with Lucky, if someone tells him to do the right thing, that's him being intimidated and harassed and all of that. So, um, he's like, "Oh, you like being a celebrity and all these people." And he's like, "I don't deserve to be celebrated. I did my job and I told the truth." Like he's like, "I just plowed the streets and I'm just saying what I saw or didn't see. And I did not see a body." Um, he talked about that he went over his testimony with Yannetti previously to him coming to testify, which that happens. The Commonwealth witnesses met with the prosecutors before they testified. The defense meets with their witnesses sometimes before they testify. Not a big deal. Hank Brennan asks him if he's ever been paid, and he says, "No, I've never been paid." Um, he asked him, "Well, do you feel targeted?" Um, and he kept saying, "No." Um, and he said, "Well, are you bad with times?" He said, "Because, you said this time last year and this year you're saying this. And like last year, you didn't say 6:15 was the 3 hours later. You said about 5:30 a.m. last year." And he might have. But the thing is, is if any time after 12:32, 12:31 to 6 a.m., no matter when he went down there for any of his passes, any of those 2 sweeps that he did first, because he didn't get to go make his 3rd one, he didn't see a body on the lawn of 34 Fairview, and he knew whose house 34 Fairview was. So, whether he said 5:30 or 6:15 or he said 2:45 or 3 a.m. or whatever, either way, he didn't see a body. His testimony doesn't really need to be down to the exact second, in the timeline. It just means that he plowed it after y'all are saying John O'Keefe's body should have been out there on the lawn, and he's saying it wasn't. He didn't see it. Um, then he talks about, "Well, didn't you also say that you hit a net that night, like a basketball hoop net or whatever?" And he said, "Yes, I misjudged the depth and I did call that in." Um, so he didn't call the Ford edge in, but when he hit something with his plow that he misjudged the depth of how low that basketball net hoop thing was, and he knocked it, he called it in. It's not he didn't I don't think he destroyed it or anything, but he called it in. Um, he said, "Well, didn't they want to were they did they ask you if you could point out um a Ford Edge?" And he says, "Yes, the defense's private investigator took me to a parking lot and wanted to make sure that I knew what a Ford Edge looked like, and I pointed out um a Ford Edge that was in the parking lot." Um, and he's like, "Well, did they point it out to you?" And then you were like, "Yeah, that is what I saw." He said, "No, I know what a Ford Edge looks like." Um, he talked about that the investigator and him met in at nighttime in a school parking lot, and Lucky took this investigator down the route that he took um, on January 29th, 2022, took him the route that he took, to show him, he went down there, Fairview, he did this, came back, then went down again, and then what his route was that night. Um, and then after giving Lucky all this shit about misremembering times, and he's like, "Well, didn't you say 5:30 last year?" Um, And he said, "Well, I was going by this, and then when I estimated about this amount of time to do it, and then it came up with that because they gave me a time, so I worked from there." But this, he's saying, I'm saying it was about 6:15. He's probably had time to go review things and notes or different things like that. Hank Brennan brings up a video from a police dash cam footage, and you can see, let's bring this up. Mm, 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 mm. Where is the cross examination? Okay, here we go. All right. So we're going to share this screen. And we're going to be able to see, if you look back there at the street where you can kind of see the street light kind of in the dark off there, back in here, you're going to see coming from the left And keep in mind, this says 6/19/22 on January 29th, 2022. And there goes Lucky in his plow truck right here. You can see his lights and his trailer and all that. So why are you, Hank, trying to be like, "Well, didn't you say this time?" When you have him on video passing at about 6:15-ish, 6:19, close to 6:15. He tries to get him to say, "Well, didn't you hang around the area?" And then he showed him other things, and then he's like, "Well, that doesn't look like mine. That just looks like another truck." He was like, "Weren't you just hanging around the area going back and forth?" He's like, "No, I went and plowed my route." Um, and um, then he talks about, hadn't been harassed since last year when you testified, right? No, he hasn't been harassed since last year. Brennan tries to enter into evidence a Turtle Boy article, and um, he says he's never seen that article. Um, and so the article is the first article or something that Turtle Boy wrote up about Lucky. And the article was dated in 2023, which is almost basically a year after Lucky had already talked to the defense team and the PI. Um, but Turtle Boy didn't know that Lucky had already been talked to and had given his side of events. Could have Turtle Boy later have handled the situation better? Yes. Um, but Lucky had already come forward with his information and had talked to the defense in 2 weeks after the incident. Turtle Boy doesn't come on scene until a year later. Um, and when he's like, "Oh, you wanted to be a celebrity and, weren't you paying attention to this blogger and don't you follow this blogger now?" And, all this. And he's like, "I wasn't paying attention to these articles and everything that was happening because I lost my wife around this time." So basically, like, excuse me, I was dealing with something else. So no, I wasn't paying attention to what people were saying online because I was grieving my deceased wife now. But thanks is kind of how he was. He stood firm with Hank Brennan, which is good. He he didn't let Hank Brennan get anything out of him. He's like, "Oh, you've been embraced since the last trial." Okay, because he came up and said what he said, that he is not he's a Canton resident, and even though he knows the Alberts, he went to school with some of them. He used to work with he used to work at one of their pizza shops. His brother was on the Canton Select Board with a member of the Albert family. Lucky was not willing to compromise his integrity and the truth just because he knew the Alberts. And so, whether it was possibly Turtle Boy intimidating him, he could have also been being intimidated possibly by the McAlberts. Like, you know, we go back. Or, hey, Michael, talk to your brother Lucky. You know, like he could have been getting it from both sides, but he came in there and he just said, "I was just doing my job. And I'm just here to tell you what I didn't see." And I did not see a body on that lawn. And then Hank Brennan ends with a picture that somebody took with Lucky that is as part of the Free Karen Reed movement. I think they said it was Rita, who is well known in Canton as well. Um, and she is a part of the Free Karen Reed movement. And it's like, oh, so see, you're celebrated now. And it's like, Hank, do you realize that when you're like, oh, people love you now that you are testifying for the defense and these people that are part of like the Free Karen Reed movement, you're telling the jury that the public doesn't think that Karen Reed is guilty, that people think she's innocent. Do you really want the jury to know that? Because they shouldn't know that. But yeah, if you want to put in there that people are being celebrated for telling the truth about Karen Reed, go ahead. It doesn't make your case look any better. And I don't think you won any points with Lucky. I think he is just an honest man who just lives his life. He's a regular Joe. He goes to work, he makes his money, comes home. He used to spend time with his family. I don't know if he has any kids, but he's just your regular guy. Um, but y'all let me know. Did you think that Lucky was good? Do you believe Lucky? It has been said that he is apparently colorblind, but that doesn't mean that um, he can't drive. He wore contacts the day he drove. He did not wear his glasses. And then also, Hank wanted to talk about, where is it? Hank brought this picture up. Let me show you this because he was like, well, did you see a dumpster in somebody's driveway since you were looking so hard at people's driveways? A dumpster and a dead body on the lawn are not the same thing, Brennan, but okay. But the dumpster is over here to the right of this house. There's a car and then there's dumpsters right near that. And he's like, "No, I didn't see the dumpsters. I wasn't looking for dumpsters near people's houses. Dumpsters were not gonna come out they weren't gonna come jumping out at me." Um, Seeing somebody dead on the lawn or a body laying in the lawn like that is out of place. And, he's like, "I'm scanning the roads. I'm looking back and forth and all of that because I need to make sure that cars aren't coming out, and I need to make sure that there's, God forbid, any animals," he said, "jump out into the road. I don't wanna hit them. People," you know? He's not looking for jumping dumpsters. But Hank thought he scored big on the fact that Lucky did not see the dumpster. So how can we be sure that he did or didn't see a body on the lawn at 34 Fairview? You can do you can make your own judgment on what you think about him and his testimony and whether you believe him or not. Let me know what you think in the comments down below, and I'll see you for the next witness. Bye.